Today, I want to talk about that one thing that's been holding you back from truly healing your reproductive health issues, your infertility, or quite honestly, any chronic disease or illness that you've been struggling with. A lot of the times when we've been dealing with something for a long time, especially, and we feel like we've tried so much, we've changed our diet, we've changed our lifestyle, maybe we've seen different healers, different modalities, and still things are not getting better. It can be super frustrating, and I completely understand that. And that's what this podcast is about, right? How to shed light on why you're not moving the needle or where to look at. And quite honestly, it comes down to this one thing. If you don't make changes, you'll never change. And I'm going to say that again for impact. If you don't make changes, you'll never change. Whatever disease, illness, or symptom is showing up in your body was created in the environment that you were in, right? So it was created in the environment of the diet, the lifestyle, the mindset, and the emotions that you were in. And I'm not saying this to blame you for your illness, disease, or symptoms. It's definitely not a blame game, but it's responsibility, right? It's not your fault that you didn't know better. It's not your fault that you weren't taught better. It's not your fault, but your symptoms were created from something. I don't believe in bad luck just as much as I don't believe in good luck. We're not just unlucky and all of a sudden we end up with infertility or a chronic reproductive health issue or any other chronic illness. There is a reason it happens. And often what we're missing when we are trying to heal that is that we're looking for other people to heal us, right? We go to naturopaths, functional medicine doctors, we go to acupuncturists, and we're expecting other people to heal us when at the end of the day, nobody can heal you but you. I'm a firm believer that if you're suffering from some chronic illness, disease, or symptom, that you should absolutely have support. Everyone needs support and guidance. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner and I go to see someone when I have an issue, right? I don't try to solve all my own problems, right? We can't look at ourselves with the same lens that someone else would. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for what you do at home, right? You're responsible for what you do throughout the day. You're responsible for your emotions, mindsets, and beliefs, nobody else. If you don't make changes, you'll never change. So to give you an example, my fertility story. With my first child, it took me almost 2 years to get pregnant. And with my second child, it only took me 2 months because I made a lot of changes in my life. And also just to note, I mean, this is obvious, but to point out, with my second child, I was older. It should have been harder for me to get pregnant, but it wasn't. It was easier because I made the changes that my body needed. So with my first child, I was a vegetarian from age 13 to 21, and I started to try to get pregnant around age 30, and I was definitely eating meat at that point, but maybe once or twice or 3 times a week. And I was studying Chinese medicine at the time, so I knew that meat was supported for fertility, and especially red meat. I just couldn't get myself to eat it. And I think I didn't really trust how much my body needed it. So it took me a long time to start incorporating meat into my diet. It's like I had changed everything else, but I just wouldn't do that, right? I just didn't believe strong enough that eating meat was beneficial for me or something. For some reason, I just didn't do it. But then I did start eating meat, and I started eating red meat regularly, and not only did I feel better, I got pregnant quicker. And again, that's just one piece of the puzzle, right? It's never just one thing, but it's that was one thing that I was resistant to changing. And when I did, it made a huge difference. I was also super resistant to changing my activity level. I was an active person. I was a runner. I was doing HIIT workouts and all of that, and it felt good. So I didn't want to change it. There was a resistance there, but I had to change that, right? I needed to change that to nourish my body and to build resources. And when I did, again, I was able to get pregnant easier. I see resistance like this a lot in my practice for a lot of things. One of the big ones is coffee. Whenever I talk to a woman or a patient about stopping drinking coffee, there tends to be a lot of resistance because one, everyone does it. Most of us have been doing it since we were teenagers or early 20s. So you've been doing it for a long time. And it's really hard to correlate if you've been doing it for an extended period of time that your symptoms are an effect of that, right? So, a lot of the times people will drink coffee and they'll have trouble sleeping, but they'll be like, it's not the coffee. I have it at 8 a.m., so it's not it. I can tell you from personal experience, if I have coffee at 7 a.m., I'm not sleeping at night. And yes, I'm extremely sensitive to it. But for years, I would drink literally a fourth a cup of coffee and not realize that my insomnia was partially caused by that, large part caused by that, not completely caused by that. Because again, everything is more than just one thing, but it was a big part of it. Or I see resistance again to things that feel good in the moment, right? Cold plunging feels good in the moment. It's going to kill your reproductive health, but it feels good. So it's hard to break past that concept of like, well, if it feels good for me, why is it bad for me, right? And it comes back to that understanding and knowledge. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, when we cold plunge, it causes our body to release a lot of yang energy, a lot of heat to then warm up the body, right? Because our body cannot be stayed in a frozen state. And that yang energy is very depleting on our body. Our yin and yang energies come from the same bucket. Yin energy is sex hormones. So when you're releasing those yang energy endorphins, such as cortisol and adrenaline, you're reducing your body's ability to make yin hormones, such as sex hormones. Anyways, that's not what the podcast topic is about, but it's this concept that if something feels good, then why would we stop doing it? And the same thing goes for like intense exercise and sweating and saunas. They feel good on our body, so why would we stop doing them? And again, right, your body needs a lot of fluids for your reproductive health. Your body needs thin fluids, hydration to build blood. The basis of building blood is thin fluids. Your body needs substance to create something. And blood is one of the main resources that helps maintain your reproductive health and your fertility. So just because something feels good for you in the moment doesn't mean that it's overall good for you. I get a lot of resistance when it comes to medication when I talk about things like that too. And by the way, I don't ever tell patients they should go off of medication. That should 100% be their choice. I just point certain things out, right? Like if a patient comes to me and they have a symptom of headaches that are constant, or maybe it's once a week, whatever it might be, and then I look up the medication that they're taking and a known side effect is headaches, I will point that out. But then a lot of the times the resistance I will get back is, but no, I've been on this medication for over a year and the headaches just started. Well, sometimes it takes time for symptoms to build up. Not everything is going to be immediate and not everything is going to be like glared at us, right? It's not like the second you take Tylenol, your digestive system goes out of sorts. It doesn't always work like that. All this to say, if you don't make changes, you'll never change, your health will never change, and your symptoms will never change. So if you feel like you're stuck with your healing journey, or maybe you've just started it, and this is a great place to start also, notice where is that resistance, right? Like what is that one thing in your life that you're resistant to changing? Maybe someone mentioned to you at some point something, or maybe it just feels wrong or right in your body, but there's some resistance that's stopping you from making that change. Or maybe it's something emotional. A lot of times it is something emotional, right? In a Chinese medicine perspective, the root of all illness starts in our mind. It starts in our thoughts, beliefs, which create our emotions. So then you need to ask yourself, what are those intrusive thoughts and beliefs that keep coming up for me? And this can be really hard to discover. This is a wonderful thing to journal on, especially when you feel emotional, right? Like when you feel angry or sad or frustrated or hopeless, like this is a really good thing to journal on, is what are the thoughts and beliefs that are coming up for me? A lot of us have these underlying negative thoughts and beliefs that have been running in the back of our mind for years. And a lot of times we don't know it because it seems like normal. It seems like common sense. A lot of times our negative thoughts are thoughts that many other people have. So they're quote unquote normal, or they're thoughts that they just make sense, right? So something like, if I lose my job, something bad's going to happen, right? Like this thought that if I lose my job, I'm not going to have enough money. Yeah, that is a negative. That is true. If you lose your job, you stop getting your income. That doesn't need to be your thought. Your thought could be that if I lose my job, a new opportunity will open up for me where I can make more income, right? Like there's always a way to flip the script. So you really need to look at everything. You need to look at your diet, your lifestyle, your patterns, your habits, your exercising, your thoughts, beliefs, mindset, your job, your career, your work, your love life, your relationships, and ask yourself, what doesn't feel right and what am I resisting? And that's where you need to send your focus if you're starting healing or finding yourself stuck in your healing journey. And a lot of the times, the one thing that we find is something that we don't want to look at because it's hard, right? We're not going to be drawn to the hard work, right? But usually that one thing, especially if you're dealing with a chronic issue, is going to be something that's hard. It's going to be some sort of shadow work. It's going to be something that doesn't feel good and brings up a lot of negative energy and emotions for you, because that's what you need to work through, right? Your body is your guide. It's your microphone really telling you that something is going on. And oftentimes we don't want to look at what that thing is because it doesn't feel good. I get a lot of women in my practice who are stuck in jobs that they don't love because of an underlying fear and belief around money. And at the end of the day, if you're in a career or a job path that is not meant for you, that's not following your purpose, your body is going to react to it, whether you like it or not, right? And these can be big things that we don't want to look at because it's hard. It takes energy, it takes work, and it doesn't feel good. And it puts us in a place where we might not feel safe and secure. It can also be really little things or seemingly little things of, you have a great diet, but all you eat is cold foods, which if you've listened to anything on my podcast, you've probably heard me say how horrible cold foods are for your overall health, right? So to just reiterate again, in case you haven't heard it, cold foods constrict your digestive system, right? So our body needs to warm up food to be ordered, to break it down, to assimilate it, and to break the nutrients down into our body to use those nutrients to build resources in our body. When we eat cold food, it takes more energy for our body to break down that food, right? And that energy has to come from somewhere, and it comes from our spleen, pancreas, from our digestive system. Over time, what happens is we use up too much of that energy, and our body doesn't have the energy that it needs to properly break down and assimilate the food that we eat. When we're not able to break down and assimilate the nutrients from the food that we eat, our body doesn't have the energy it needs. So your resistance could be as simple as changing your diet from smoothies to soups, right? It doesn't always have to be a career change or a location change or a relationship change. It can be something easier, maybe still hard for you mentally, physically, or emotionally, but it can be something easier. When we're talking about our habits and our lifestyle and our food and making changes and how things affect our body, I love thinking about Newton's third law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, when Newton is talking about this, he's talking about the law of motion. But our bodies are all about motion. They're a motion of the energy between our organs, the motion of the energy of our organs, the motion of our chi, our energy flowing throughout the body, the motion of our blood throughout our body, right? Our bodies are full of energy and full of motion. And so for everything that you're doing in your diet, your life, your mindset, you have to think about the equal and opposite reaction. And this is a huge part of Chinese medicine, and I think it's really cool. So in Chinese medicine, when we're talking about food, every food has an energetics to it, right? So onion, garlic, and spicy foods are all hot foods. They're hot. They're not warming. They are hot foods. So when we eat hot foods, it creates heat internally. And what our body does, the equal and opposite reaction, is it sends up dampness, essentially phlegm, to help put out that heat, right? Our body tries to essentially throw water on fire. And that dampness creates mucus in the body, which will end up as things like actual mucus in your nose or throat. It can end up as holding on to weight. It can end up as painful periods, fibroids, cysts, things like that, just to name a few. But I love this concept of equal and opposite reaction and how it applies to our bodies. On the same end, when we add cold into our diet, right? So if we eat cold foods, iced drinks, our body will respond by raising heat. And again, that heat's not a great thing. We want our bodies to be warm. We don't want them to be cold or to be hot. And that heat can create inflammation in our body and can end up with things like joint pain, rashes, acne, menstrual cycles that are too short or too long, irregular menstrual cycle, painful periods, again, a bunch of things. And something that's really easy to understand is when we rest, we create energy, right? So that equal and opposite reaction to rest is energy. So this is another idea that you can kind of take into your day, into your lifestyle, and notice what is the equal and opposite reaction of everything that you're doing, right? Your thoughts, your beliefs, your lifestyle, the food you eat. So to wrap it up, if you are struggling at healing your long-term chronic reproductive health issues, struggling with infertility or any chronic issue, or maybe you're at the start of your journey, just remember, if you never make changes, you'll never change. And those important changes usually come from the shadows, from those things that we are resisting in our lives. Now, a lot of the times it can be really hard to understand what is good for us, what is right for us in our bodies, and what is our body trying to tell us, which is why I never think anyone should have to heal themselves, that anyone should do it alone. I never try to heal myself, right? I see other practitioners. So if you are seeking support, you don't know where to start, you don't know where to look, please reach out. You can book a free discovery call, or you can email me or DM me. I'm always happy to answer questions.